You're listening to the New Story podcast from New Story Church in Kansas City. To learn more about New Story Church, visit our website at www.newstory.church.
Welcome, everybody, to the Equip podcast, equipping you to live out your Christian life as you faithfully love God and love others with truth and grace. My name is Jeremy. I'm one of the pastors here at New Story. I work with our students, creative team primarily, and today it's just me on the podcast, and we're doing it in a little different way. If you're just listening, nothing's different for you, but it's also going to be up on our YouTube video form as well. I saw with some of what we're going to be talking about, it's sometimes good to be eyeball to eyeball as best we can. I mean, eyeball to camera lens, if you will. But there's certain things we go through today. It's going to be heavy. It's going to be honest with you. And there's certain things that there's a specific way I want to say them. So if you're watching, I'll be reading a few things. Otherwise, I'll try to stay engaged as much as I can on screen. But today we're going to talk about the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the murder of Charlie Kirk, and kind of the fallout from that in our culture, responses to it, everything like that. But I was surprised that there's some people that don't even know who Charlie Kirk was. So I'll give a quick rundown of who Charlie was, and then we'll get to it. There'll be moments where I'm a little bit punchy in this, just to let you know. I think it's just important at times to be like that and be a little bit more direct. There will be some of that in here. Just to give you a heads up, maybe something to look forward to if you like that kind of thing. But Charlie, he was he wasn't an elected official, but he was one of the most visible conservative activists of this generation. He was 18 years old when he started an organization called Turning Point USA, and it was dedicated to kind of pushing back what he described as the liberal bias in school and on college campuses. So he spent a lot of time on college campuses. And over the years, TPUSA, or Turning Point USA, grew to really a national force with chapters around the country, known for its, just to be honest, culture war messaging and a focus on mobilizing young conservatives. Honestly, Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA were a big reason why Donald Trump won the election this last year, or had such an influence in kind of young conservatives, was because of Charlie Kirk. And he quickly became more than just an organizer. He became a media figure. He became a podcaster. He had his own show, frequent speaker at national conservative platforms. Maybe you saw him. He spoke at a lot of churches as well. Reached millions with his debates and viral clips that went around. He had conversations about free speech, political correctness, and American values all over college campuses. He did some famous some debates. He did like overseas even. He did Jubilee, the kind of circle. If you've seen some of those videos, he did one of those as well. I think it was like 20 liberals versus one conservative or something like that, like they do. But he, like I said, he never held public office. His influence inside Republican politics was very, very real. And if you are in that world at all or pay attention to that world, you probably know that. He advised on campaigns. He aligned himself closely with Donald Trump. He knew Donald Trump. For many young conservatives, Kirk was the first point of contact, kind of a gateway into this conservative movement. But Kirk was also a lightning rod for controversy. His rhetoric got a lot of fierce criticism from opponents or people that were on the other side who said he went about, traffic conspiracies, if you will, and misinformation, and made racially charged stereotypes, all this different stuff. And if you listen to some of his stuff, you may see that, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But on September 10th, I'm filming this September 11th. So on September 10th, he was on his American comeback tour where he was traveling around different universities doing this format called Prove Me Wrong, where he would just invite debate from people on the college campus, usually surrounded by a whole crowd of people, and that was the case yesterday. Unfortunately, as he was debating, a sniper fired from a nearby building, shot him in the neck, and it resulted in him dying soon afterwards, leaving behind his wife, Erica, and 2 little girls. I remember, it was just yesterday, I remember it like it was just yesterday. I was sitting in my office, just working, and when I saw something about Charlie Kirk trending and a potential shot, I was like, oh shoot. So I use Twitter, for example, for really breaking news and current updates and to see what's trending, what's happening in the world. And I went there. Charlie Kirk was trending number 1. I tapped on it, and the very first thing I saw was a video from about 15 feet away of him getting shots, and I'll spare you detail. The aftermath. I remember in that moment, I hadn't felt this in a while, where my heart rate went up, and it was almost like a trauma response, because we're not meant to see that. And that was one of many videos, as you can imagine, in an environment like he was in. There's cameras everywhere. I had to just breathe a little bit, and it wasn't because I knew Charlie or anything like that. It was I just watched somebody get murdered while just sitting in my office. I'm not meant to see that. And my body was reacting, reminding me that that's true. And as I scrolled past that and down, I was hit with wave after wave of sorrow and anger and rage. Basically everything antithetical to the fruit of the Spirit, to be honest with you. Based on what I was seeing, people responding to it, reacting to it, and just the act in of itself. But I took a step back and I began to write a response. And I prayed over that. And then I posted that yesterday. But what I want to do for just a little bit today is walk through some of the reactions and how we as followers of Jesus, if that's you, that's who I'm talking to. If you're not a follower of Jesus, cool, I'm glad you're here. But this is primarily for followers of Jesus that I'm talking to. I want to look at how we can respond. I'm not going to tell you how you should. I'm going to say, hey, these are ways that we can. You're a grown adult, you're going to do what you want, or you're a teenager, you can make your own decisions. But I want to walk through those. The first reactions that I saw as I scrolled on Twitter, and then as a result on Facebook, on Instagram, because it blew up everywhere. The first thing I saw was celebrations. There was a lot of sarcastic thoughts and prayers. Because, I'm sure you're aware that's what a lot of Christians or conservatives say. Every time there's a school shooting or some other shooting, hey, thoughts and prayers for the family. And it has become just something, unfortunately, that's said, and there's not a lot of action behind those things. And so a lot of people are very cynical towards that sentiment, even though for Christians it may mean a lot. And so a lot of sarcastic and cynical thoughts and prayers going around. A lot of responses that I put some of them in here, and I just deleted them because I can't bring myself to read them. Just really dark things from other humans. And I'll say, no matter his controversial opinions or how deeply you may justifiably disagree with Charlie Kirk, responding to violence with mockery or just even indifference reveals a conscience that has grown numb or at best just desensitized. If we just shared that video around like it was nothing, where somebody literally got murdered, I think we've become desensitized. If we celebrated that, it's like, man, another one gone, another one bites the dust, thankfully another one's dead. We are now a part of the problem. No longer are they a part of the problem. If you did that, you are part of the problem. You can't stand against gun violence while actively celebrating gun violence. Hopefully we can see the inconsistency in that. Like we rightly cry in outrage when children are shot and murdered in schools, yet it is a dark, dark turn. And this is what I posted yesterday. It is a dark turn when we begin deciding whose lives are acceptable to take and whose are not. The moment we begin treating certain lives as disposable, we reveal the rot of our morality. And if we're not careful, our anger and even our perceived moral high ground that we feel like we're standing on can become the very thing that we hate. We can become the very thing that we're criticizing them for. And judging from the past, I'm not sure that's the side of history that we want to be on. The ones that are deciding whose lives are acceptable to take. And with that being the first response after my heart rate went up, watching someone be murdered on my phone and to see people celebrating it broke my heart. I was filled with rage. And I don't get like that very often. Another reaction that I saw from people, this was mainly from people on the right, if you will, was just this sentiment of conservatives saying they're going to get what's coming to them. They're going to get what's coming to them, or the rules of engagement have now changed. Meaning, this is how you want to do it? Bring it on, we'll do it too. Or they drew a line in the sand. These are all quotes that I'm pulling from people's posts that claim to be conservative and Christian. Here's an example. Ryan Fournier, I think that's how you say his last name. He's an American conservative political activist and commentator. He co-founded Students for Trump and is now the acting chairman of that. He posted after Charlie Kirk passed, he said, "Congratulations, you've now made a radical out of me. You effers deserve it." But he didn't say effers, you know what he said. That sentiment was all over the place. Even more of an issue than that sentiment is 2 months before, Ryan posted this. "Jesus Christ is our one true King, yesterday, today, and forever. We honor him daily. He alone is worthy of all the glory and praise. It is by grace that we live, and in his name that we stand. There are no kings besides him." But you've made a radical now out of me. You effers deserve what's coming to you. Shouldn't have to explain why this type of response is out of pocket. It's not a response, it's a reaction. Especially for someone who claims to be a Christian. What I'll tell you is if we continue to see the other side as the problem, the only problem, if we speak to them with contempt and speak to them, speak about them as our enemies and like they're the problem, they're all the issue, it's all them, then we should not be surprised when that contempt comes back at us in darker forms. This goes both ways. The way we name people shapes how we treat them. Words plant seeds, and those seeds can either grow into reconciliation or they can grow into resentment. And I think we are seeing the result of the seeds that we've been planting for the last 15 years. We're seeing the results of those. We continually dehumanize and demonize our opponents. And when we do that, we're laying the groundwork for violence to feel justified. Because again, if Charlie is a fascist Nazi, then we're laying the groundwork for a justified killing of a fascist Nazi. And just switch that around. I'm using this example because that's what happened, but switch that around because conservatives do it the exact same. We keep throwing these things around, pointing out, like that was the response I saw from pastors and other Christians, is the only response to Charlie Kirk dying was like, didn't I tell you? Didn't I tell you this is what this side does? How do you think people are going to respond to that, man? Like, sooner or later, someone's going to act on it the other way. And we should not be surprised because we were contributing to it. Sorry, I'm trying to be very careful, but it's hard. So some said, Now they're going to get what's coming to them after this. And others said, he got what was coming to him because of the things that he said. And what I'll say, and this is the part where I want to tread very carefully. I've had the privilege of officiating about 40 funerals. Very first one was my grandpa, and I've done many in the community here, and for my other family members. And as I've done multiple funerals for people that I've never known, what I've learned is that nothing shines up a halo better than death. I don't think it's Christ-like or wise to just disparage the dead, and if someone's passed away, just completely just pile on. We have a family who's mourning, a family who's grieving. So that's not what we will do here. There was much to commend Charlie on, and how he carried himself and how he lived his life, but at the same time, we can't just gloss over what he said. And no matter what he said, just to be clear, this was not deserved. What happened to him was not deserved, because that's not how we respond when we have a disagreement in what we say. But I think there is fair criticism from a Christian perspective for many things that I don't think line up with how Jesus would have us talk about and treat others. Things that are more influenced by his identity as an American than his identity as a Christ follower. He often attacked DEI, like diversity, equity, inclusion programs for different companies. Over his concern with DEI, he got to the point where he said, man, if I took a flight and I saw that there was a black pilot, I'm going to question, boy, I hope he's qualified. And that was the least of harsh things that he said for people. He called white privilege a myth, promoted the so-called Great Replacement theory, and said it's not just a theory; it's a real thing. Great Replacement is a conspiracy theory asserting that non-white and non-Christian immigrants are just being are replacing white people in America, and it's going to lead to the downfall of our nation. This is what Great Replacement is. If you ever hear that, he has a lot that he has said. That were crass and harsh under the banner of just speaking the truth. But we know that we have to speak the truth in love. And where we don't, we're just noise. And for a lot of people, that was Charlie, just noise. And a quote that has gone around a lot has been one from a couple years ago. And this is what people have said, see? He was bringing it on himself. This is what he wanted. Again, I will clarify, even though I have disagreements with Charlie Kirk, none of this was earned. None of this was justified. The quote that's gone around is Charlie said this: I think it's worth the cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. It's a prudent deal. It's rational, and I think it's worth it. Now, many shared that, pointing out the irony. Making the point that it should change your mind, the reader, the listener, it should change your mind about his death by gun because it was something he said was worth the risk. The issue is when people share that, they don't believe that. The people sharing it aren't trying to also make the case that this was worth it. They're trying to make the case that Charlie was a crackpot. And so what they end up doing is just using murder as a tool to make a point. They've minimized death to make a point. And it's evil. But probably the most common response or reaction that I've seen was along the lines, and this has been a sentiment that I've seen a lot of places, that if you were silent on this fill-in-the-blank issue, then I don't care to hear you talk about Charlie. For example, let me give an example. If there's a shooting at Evergreen High School outside Denver, where a student shot 2 others before turning the gun on themselves. This happened basically at the exact same time as stuff was going down with Charlie. The 2 that were shot were not killed. Nonetheless, it was another school shooting. And so the point was, if you were silent about this school shooting or another school shooting or silent about this thing, I don't care to hear. Miss me on your outrage about Charlie. And that feels good to say. But why did Charlie's feel so different for so many people? Why did it garner so much attention and like outpouring of compassion for him and his family? Let me give you a few reasons why that may be different for some people, why they may feel that differently. First, like I said, we don't necessarily know the shooter's motivation fully, but from our estimation so far, it was politically and ideologically motivated. That feels different than just a normal, like unwell person with a bloodlust shooting up a school. And if someone holds the similar or the same politics as Charlie did, then it can almost feel like an attack on them as well. An attack on Charlie is an attack on me because I believe the same things as Charlie, and they killed him for that. That's why it can feel a little bit more than maybe school shooting, a little bit more personal. Another reason why it may be more personal for people is when we listen to and interact with the content of people on a regular basis, it brings a natural like connectedness to that person. Maybe you've heard the term parasocial relationships. That's what this is referring to, where we almost like, I have people that I've listened to on YouTube for 10 years, and it's almost like they're my friends. I know they're not, right? But it's the same type feels. Like it's parasocial. You can generate a connectedness to that person. Like you know a lot about them. They have no idea who you are, but you know a lot about them. Whereas for other shootings, they may not have felt as connected or known anyone that was involved in a school shooting. And so it doesn't feel as personal. So it hits different. For example, we hear about drunk drivers killing people on a regular basis. But if one of those people happened to be our mother that was killed, it would understandably hit us a lot harder. And we wouldn't say that if we were silent about drunk drivers killing so many people a year, that we don't get to speak up when it's our mom. Like you can see the difference in that, right? That's highly likely reason when you have upwards of 30 million followers across your platforms like Charlie did, a lot of people felt connected to him. And so it's going to hit different. This can also feel different because thankfully no one is quick to mock or celebrate the death of children in school shootings, but some did with Charlie. So for many, it feels like an indictment on the moral character of our country. Like, this is what we're going to do. I have to work with these people tomorrow. I have to live by these people. I have to rub shoulders with these people. And this is, really? Now, outside of the school shooting, the example given more than any other was the murder of Melissa Hortman, who was a Democrat state-level politician in Minnesota, the murder of her and her husband. It was a politically, on June 14th of this year, it was a politically motivated act of violence that was not just a random tragedy, but it was a deliberate attack, a planned attack on a public servant and her family, an attempt to replace debate with bullets. And they left behind 2 adult children when they were murdered. And from what we know so far, this is no different than what happened with Charlie. And so it feels, for many, inconsistent and wrong to lament Charlie when there wasn't the same response to Melissa Hortman and her husband. I hear that, and it's a fair critique. Melissa deserved public outrage and lament too, and my hope is that we don't use, this is the key, my hope is that we don't use silence in one tragedy to excuse silence in another, but instead we choose to learn from it. If anything, Melissa's death reminds us to never stay silent when life is cut short unjustly, no matter who it is. Same with Charlie. And I think it's very easy in these moments when we don't feel the same as others to point out where we see inconsistencies and to discount them. We'll say things like, you don't care about the things I care about in the way I think you should care about them. That's essentially what we're saying. First, I would argue, if we take this line of thinking, I don't think it's a standard that we want to set. It's not a standard you want your life checked with, because we will all lose in an extremely broken world. For example, there's political assassinations around the world on a regular basis, some very recent. And you didn't speak out on those now, so why do you get to speak out about Melissa's? Like, we can do this all day. But my point is, if we say, be silent here because you were silent there, while it might be representative of some sort of bias, it shows that we are not actually interested in contributing to a solution. We just want to dunk on people. And if we're not careful with this, it doesn't take long. It doesn't take long for people's tragedies to just become props that are advantageous to us when we're trying to make a point. Speak from personal experience. In 2020, I felt the push from culture and from people within my own sphere that if I didn't speak out on this quote unquote thing, my silence was deafening. It speaks volumes. And if I did speak out and I didn't do it the right way or say the right words, it would be akin to spiritual abuse, and my white supremacy is showing, or whatever other fill in the blank thing. There was a standard being set that none of us, a purity test that none of us could live up to. Could those things be true? Absolutely. I think that's fair in some ways. But it's not conducive to trying to solve any political or interpersonal issue. And I just want to caution us that because someone doesn't publicly speak out on an issue, you believe they should and choose to with this one, with Charlie, does not mean that they are careless. But they may be processing differently. They may be grieving quietly. They may be speaking in ways that you can't see. Silence in public does not always equal silence in our hearts. Let's be careful not to equate someone's timing or the way in which they respond with a lack of compassion. Instead, let's focus on a little bit deeper call. To hate what is evil, to cling to what is good, and embody the love of Christ in our words and in our actions. That's what Christians are called to. But the question stands. Why would so many speak out about Charlie and not Melissa Hortman? An obvious answer and more cynical would be political divides. For example, Donald Trump said nothing about it that I could find, and I scoured and I searched. In fact, when asked if he would call Governor Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, he said Trump's only response was, he's whacked out and calling him would be a waste of time. In the response to the assassinations of Melissa Hortman and her husband. Whereas here, when Charlie passes, the flag is being required to be at half staff, and Trump is awarding Charlie the Presidential Medal of Freedom. So to say politics are not a part of it wouldn't be fully honest. It's ignoring context. But I would say that a majority of Americans didn't even know about the Hortmans. We are unfortunately slaves to our algorithms, and if news publications are not pushing it, we're highly likely not to see it. I ran some analytics on news coverage, and it was fairly minimal in comparison on that day. Coverage for Melissa Hortman. Why? Why did the news not cover it very much? Well, do you know what else happened on June 14th of this year? Tell me if this sounds familiar. It was Trump's birthday celebration in D.C., which coincided with the United States Army's 250th anniversary, and it was a military parade through D.C. At the same time, there were millions and millions of people in the streets around the country in dozens of cities for No King's Day, where they were doing marches to say, hey, we have no king, in a push against Donald Trump. Now you tell me, which headlines did you see more of? So I'd say that to say, before assuming ill intent on people and suggesting that they are careless because they haven't spoken on these other issues, I think a little benefit of the doubt would go a long way for us. Because I'm sure even less people know that the Hortmans weren't the only Democratic lawmakers targeted on that day. Did you know that? See, earlier, before the Hortmans were murdered, the same man that killed them went to State Senator John Hoffman's home and shot him and his wife multiple times before moving on to the Hortmans. But no one brings up them either. It's just the Hortmans. Because they made even less news than the Hortmans did. Thankfully, the Hoffmans survived, but it was just as evil, but less known. See, whether it is Irina Zarutska, the young woman that was killed in the subway recently, Evergreen High School shooting, the attempted assassination of the Hoffmans, the assassination of the Hortmans, or the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the point is the same. Every one of these moments represents a tragic loss of life, the tearing apart of families, the erosion of our shared humanity. And if our first instinct is to measure whose tragedy deserves more outrage, we've already lost sight of what makes us human in the first place. See, the call of Christ is not to grade grief on some partisan scale, but to weep with those who weep, to stand against violence wherever it shows itself, and to refuse to let our compassion be dictated by our politics and our algorithms. If we can learn to respond to every act of violence with consistency and humility and love, then maybe we can begin to embody a better way that Jesus has called us to. And a starting point is refusing these partisan reactions that would place blame on the radical leftists in their party or the fascist far right in their party, but recognize that as it stands, both have a propensity for violence. See, Ezra Klein, a journalist and podcaster, said it well when he said this. He said, in the last few years, we have seen the plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer, Democratic lawmaker, the storming of the Capitol and pipe bombs left at the RNC and the DNC, the break-in to kidnap Nancy Pelosi, and the brutal beating of her husband Paul Pelosi with a hammer to the skull that fractured his skull, multiple assassinations attempts against Trump, the assassination of Minnesota House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband, and the shooting of State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, Luigi Mangione's assassination of Brian Thompson, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. See, political violence is contagious. It is spreading, and it's not confined to one side or one belief system. It should terrify all of us. The foundation of a free society is the ability to participate in it without fear of violence, and political violence is always an attack against all of us. You have to be so blind to not see this. And the more we demonize and the more we blame it all on the left and the more we blame it all on the right, the more of it we will see. And the less of Jesus they will see in us. So, for Christians, how can we respond? Rather than participate in the reactions that we've seen above, getting into debates online that are going to go nowhere, how can we respond? Well, I want to go to Scripture first and let that be our guide. I want to look at James. This is the brother of Jesus. And he wrote this in chapter 1, verse 19. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. Because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. So there's a way that God desires that's meant for us to follow. And anger rarely produces that. And then in chapter 2, verse 3, he goes on about our speech. He says we put bits in the mouths of horses and make them obey us. We can turn the whole animal, which is pretty insane. I don't know if you have ridden. It's wild that we ever were able to control these things so they could destroy us. Verse 4, or take ships as an example. Although they are so large and driven by strong winds, they're steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants it to go. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, and it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. Verse 7, all kinds of animals and birds and reptiles and sea creatures are being tamed and have been tamed by mankind, but no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. With the tongue we praise our Lord and Father, and with it we curse human beings who have been made in the image, in God's likeness. Verse 10, out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? The obvious answer, no. My brothers and sisters, can a fig tree bear olives or a grapevine bear figs? Obvious answer, no. Neither can a salt spring produce fresh water. He's making the point. These two things should not be coming out of us. So with that in mind, how can we respond in a way that shows people more of Jesus? The first is this, and I have talked about this ad nauseum, and I will continue to talk about it because it is an ongoing issue. Practice digital hygiene, or information hygiene, either one you want to call it, digital hygiene or information hygiene. There's a four steps, right? 1, 2, 3, yes, 4. Thank you. Thank you, my notes. Number one of practicing digital hygiene, things that we need to do to be healthy as we interact online. First one is stay informed. Simply this, I want you to get information on a regular basis and engage with that information. Like, don't allow yourself to sit back and just say, well, even so come Lord Jesus, just get me out of here. As long as you're here, you have a call on your life to love God and love your neighbor, and that entails you knowing what is happening around you and what is happening to them, because you can't engage with them if you don't know what's happening to them. So if you want to help, if you want help with some resources for staying informed, reach out. I'm happy to provide those. Let me know. j.dykman@newstory.church. Email me. I'll be happy to provide some resources that you can engage with on a regular basis that are across the spectrum. Secondly, avoid echo chambers. You all have likely been in a big warehouse or a big rocky area where you can shout something and then that comes back to you. It's kind of fun. And that's the idea of an information echo or belief echo chamber. To apply, it's an environment in which a person encounters only beliefs and opinions that coincide with their own, so that their existing views are just reinforced, and alternative views, you can't even hear them because you're only hearing your own positions. Now, why is this important to avoid? Because we all have natural biases. To say you don't is a lie. You have a natural bias. Your bias just doesn't look like a bias to you because it's your bias. Okay? To put that together. We all have a natural bias, and if we're not careful, those biases can lead to prejudices and judgmentalism. And this is where I'm unwilling to hear another perspective because it's not my own, and I begin to eliminate any check and balance around me and knock stuff away because I can't be wrong, and I don't like hearing that I'm wrong. And the issue is that a bias doesn't look biased when it's my bias. It looks like truth. So we can unintentionally or even intentionally cut stuff out, create echo chambers, unless we set up some guardrails that keep us informed from various viewpoints. So please do that. Thirdly, don't assume that what you're seeing is true. So stay informed, avoid echo chambers, and thirdly, don't assume that what you're seeing is true. Don't assume something you hear is true because it supports your own point of view. That kind of rhymed. This may not be new or shocking, but cable news channels are not or are designed to bring you a point of view more than they are designed to bring you facts. And you're doing yourself and your neighbor a big disservice to assume everything that you hear is true because it happens to line up with what you believe. This is where the idea of confirmation bias comes in, which is similar to an echo chamber, what we just talked about. It's the tendency to favor information that only confirms my beliefs, my hypotheses. And so I'll read something and be like, that sounds true. That feels true to me, so I'm going to roll with it. Don't do that. Don't do that. Stay informed, avoid echo chambers, don't assume it's true, and lastly, this one's important, sanitize before you share. That doesn't mean like wash your hands before you press the share button. It means essentially make sure that you research something out before sending it around or sharing it publicly. This is a discernment issue. Over and over again in the scriptures, we are told to cultivate this element of wisdom and discernment, and our character discernment is the ability to properly discriminate between right and wrong. It's a willingness to ask, what is going beyond what is just presented to me? Is there something else happening? We should work to distinguish what is good and what is best. Hear me. To listen to cable news passively without discernment is unwise. To listen to cable news passively without discernment is unwise. And to be honest, many people that claim to have great biblical discernment, that have been Christians for a very long time, are the same people gassing up pages and posts that are easily proved false as misinformation. So I'm sorry to tell you, you have bad discernment and you look foolish. You're being negligent. Don't be that person. Practice good information hygiene, digital hygiene, by staying informed, avoiding echo chambers, not assuming what you're reading is true, and sanitizing before you share. Also, for Christians, how can we respond? Secondly, let's reject the normalization of rage, shall we? I saw this quote yesterday. As individuals and as a nation, our task now is to not let the people at the extremes pull the rest of us over the edge with them. We know there are people out here on the fringes. We have to resist the pull to do the same exact thing. Vile speech that we see should bother us. We shouldn't stand for it. We shouldn't participate in it. And we saw some of that in the responses to what happened, Charlie. It is not okay when the left does it. It is not okay when the right does it. It is not okay when Trump does it. Christians need to stop justifying his nonsense when he speaks about people and to people, because he is participating in the very thing that is leading to political outrage and violence. Here's a good litmus test. If you could sit with his wife, Charlie Kirk's wife, and say the exact same thing that you said online, one, kudos to you for your consistency, but you have lost your humanity. And if you're a follower of Jesus, you've lost your purpose. So last year I did a sermon series called Jesus, the Church, and Politics, just a few weeks, but I said in there that are posed to us, I guess, what if the greatest danger that we face isn't that people, that group, that party out there, but what if it's actually right in here, in our hearts? What if the greatest threat is much closer than we'd all like to admit, and it's actually our hearts? Because the Bible teaches that the greatest threat we face is right here. Someone else taking up residence in the temple of our hearts. And politics has a funny way of doing that. And based on some of our reactions, I think we need to ask ourselves, do we find more commonality with our political allies than we do other followers of Jesus? And if that's the case, you are prioritizing the wrong kingdom. Christian, we're far too comfortable making this world our home. Making this country our home. And I'll say every time, this is not an issue of patriotism. I'm a patriot. I love this country. I love where I live. But this is an issue of priority. This is an issue of placing the allegiance to the soil you stand on over the kingdom you belong to. And rarely is that more evident than how we talk about and how we treat other people. Please don't allow the fringes to draw you into that nonsense. Because we're called to reject the normalization of rage and insist that loving our neighbor always outweighs loyalty to a party, loyalty to a soil that we stand on. So practice, how can we respond as Christians? Practice digital hygiene, information hygiene, reject the normalization of rage. And last thing here, I want you to remember your responsibility. Speaking to myself as well. As followers of Christ, we must name what happened for what it is. It's evil. To take the life of another because of politics is to deny the image of God in them. Hopefully we recognize that. It's to declare that power is more valuable than people, that ideology is more sacred than life. And based on what I'm seeing from a lot of Christians right now, I want to remind us that this is not a time to take your politics seriously. It is a time to take your faith seriously. And I think some of us realize that, but man, am I seeing that everywhere. Like we're going to mobilize. No, it is not a time to take your politics seriously. It is a time to take your faith seriously. I think some of us realize that. Like I've also seen a ton of people that suddenly feel an urgency to make Jesus known, and praise God for that. But I have to ask, why did someone have to publicly be executed to get our stinking attention? Jesus wants to use us to make his name known, to make heaven more crowded, to make more and better followers of him. But so many of us are preoccupied with politics and just the grind, the American dream. We're so blinded by all of this stuff that we need something like this to shake us up once in a while. And it's dark and it's evil because that shouldn't have to happen for us to realize, man, I'm here for a purpose. Because Jesus showed us that his kingdom is built from the bottom up, not from the top down. Like meaning it starts in your home, it starts in your neighborhood, your friend group. That's where the kingdom starts. If the best way to build Jesus' kingdom was from a throne or an Oval Office, he wouldn't have been born in a stable. Please don't miss that. Jesus didn't skip the cross and go straight to the crown. But our idolization of the position and the power that comes with it is leading us to building the wrong kingdom. It is okay to be angry. I have been angry the past 24 hours. But remember the words of James, be angry, don't sin. Anger is a great motivator. But what is it leading us to? We don't need to allow our anger to lead us to jump to the defense of our political party and show that we're not like them. We don't need to jump to the defense of the Second Amendment. God forbid. I know that's touchy. We don't need to jump to the defense of the Second Amendment. We need to channel our anger and our righteousness into the circles God has entrusted to us, into the people around us. That's where we need to channel that. Courageous faithfulness, I heard a pastor quote this, courageous faithfulness is in the face of evil is how the church exploded 2,000 years ago. The best thing we can do now is to not bow, but to remain strong in faith. Simply put, a divided world needs a united church. So what message are they getting from you? I pray that we can be a people that as we go and take what we're feeling, we can choose to pause, pray, and respond in a way that honors the image bearer on the other side. And that makes much of the name of Jesus because we are representing him everywhere we go. Remember your responsibility. Remember why you're here, Christian. I'm going to leave us at that. Thanks for joining us. This has been the Equip Podcast, equipping you to live out your Christian life as you faithfully love God and love others with truth and grace. Let's go do it.